Hello and welcome to Series 2 of Auntie M podcast. You're here with Auntie M.
And Auntie P.
Hi P. Welcome to Series 2.
Thanks. So, Em, can you give us a rundown on what our new format is and kind of the topics we're going to be doing?
Absolutely. So, after our sort of introductory podcast that we put out, we decided we were sort of going to change up the format a little bit. And Series 2 is going to be a set of 6 episodes in which we are titling sort of Surviving Self-Care. So we're going to be talking about all things how you can be the best, most wonderful version of yourself, or at least how to work towards that. And obviously this is a massive topic, so we've cut it down into 6 episodes which are going to cover mental health, exercise, diet, relationships, aging, and how to be your best self is going to be our last episode. So of course, any of those topics, if you want to contact the show and let us know anything, that would be great. But today we're going to start off with mental health. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, and so is my mental health.
Yeah, always ready. So we'd just like to point out that I know some things you might talk about today might be a little bit triggering for people, but what we hope this episode might give you is a feeling of community, that you feel supported, and actually some physical things you can do to support yourself in your own mental health. Okay. Yeah. Whether you're struggling or not, we all need to look after ourselves. So, before we get on, how are you today, P?
I'm okay. I woke up late and I don't know if I'm checking in with myself. I'm okay because it's the weekend and the sun is shining, and I've got lots and lots of stuff to do around the house, which I enjoy. So I'm in a good place. Em, how are you?
Oh, that's great. I'm glad. I'm good. I've been out in my garden, and I have to say, it's being out in the sunshine. And I think there's a lot of people that suffer from it. Is it sad? Is it?
Seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah, I think I really do have that. And I'm a sunshine person. Considering everything I've been through recently, it's nice to wake up and look forward to doing something, which is pulling the weeds out in my garden. I feel like I'm in Animal Crossing. And I don't know if you've played that, but anyone who's played that, when you arrive in your town, it's full of weeds, and it's the most relaxing, therapeutic thing is to go around picking all the weeds out and then growing little flowers in your town. That's what I feel outside. But anyway, so I'm good today.
Also, I need to tell you there are antidepressant microbes in soil. How dirt makes you happy. Yeah, Prozac may not be the only way to get rid of your serious blues. Soil microbes have been found to have similar effects on the brain.
Do I need to rub soil all over my body then?
Yeah, go and have
my neighbour's going to see me naked, covering myself in soil.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, get out there with the hose and rub yourself all over.
What about fox pea? There's quite a lot of fox pea in my garden.
Not sure that's so good for you, Soslol. But
Soslol.
Actually, soil microbes get inside your brain and increase your serotonin. So
yes,
gardening makes you happy.
Gardening does actually make you happy. There we are. End of episode. Moving on. So today, me and P are kind of going to get a little bit personal without giving too much away. I suppose we could describe ourselves as experts, really, on mental health, because not only, especially Purdy, works in a sector that deals with some of this stuff, but also we've both been through quite a lot of difficult mental health issues. We're not going to talk about the things that that led us to be that way, because I don't think that's inescapable, isn't it, really, P? I mean,
trauma is ubiquitous.
Yeah, it happens to everybody, and it affects everybody, whether it is a huge trauma or mini traumas that happen throughout your life. And everybody, what's big to one person could be small to someone else, and so you should never belittle your problems.
Yeah, or your own kind of journey, or things that do impact on your mental health negatively. They're things that impact you, and it's not about, oh, it wasn't as bad as so and so, or it was better than this. But I'm luckier than this person, so I don't deserve to kind of feel the way I feel. Like, yeah, everybody has trauma, of some scale or another. Well, according to trauma-informed teaching resources, it's about 65% of people, and that rises to 80% in communities of colour. So barmaid communities, it's 85%.
I would have honestly thought that number would have been higher than 65%.
Well, I mean, that's based on what's known. And, a lot of people go through trauma and don't recognise it as trauma, or mental health crises and don't recognise them as mental health crises. So, I mean, that's just what's known. But I would say, I think it's probably 100%. Nobody escapes sad things.
So, I mean, what we're trying to say is that everybody has a trauma. Everybody has a story. We're not going to talk about, they might come up, but we're not really going to go in depth into what those stories are, what the trauma is, but somehow how to deal with that and how to progress and take care and have some self-care of your own mental health. Are we ready, P?
We're ready.
Going to dive in. We're deep diving. So P, could you tell me some, I could list them, of things perhaps that you've been diagnosed with, or that that are existent for your mental health?
So I would say like perfectionism, all or nothing thinking, depression, those kind of things. So sort of sometimes everything seems very bleak. How about you, Em?
Well, I've definitely got a very huge anxiety disorder, of which P sees on a regular basis. She's always like, please, you're all right, just calm down. So I have very high anxiety. I also have very, it's not bipolar, but I have a very up and down relationship with my emotions, in which I have had really bad depression, and also been sort of diagnosed with, well, they said a nervous breakdown, a mental breakdown, or a crisis, a crisis moment. And every time I've had one, it's been dealt with in a very different way. Depression is a word that gets bounded around quite a lot. And I think I know that the education of it is changing, but it's that thing of thinking that depression is when you're sad all the time. And it's not. No. Depression is actually where you don't really feel anything. You feel numb, and you feel unmotivated, and you feel like a big sort of grey mass. And there's quite a lot of times where you'd smile and be smiley and happy, and people think, if they were to point depressed people out in the room, you just can't do that. It's very much a hidden illness. A hidden health issue.
Yeah, it's a hidden illness. And and it is that thing of, it's not about sadness, although sadness is a part of it. And we're not medical professionals, disclaimer here. We're talking about this from the point of view of people who are, trying to come back from things and trying to manage things, not from the point of view of, the DSM-5 Diagnostic Manual of Mental Health Disorders. Like, we're not those people. We're not psychologists. So, so some of the impacts of having mental health difficulties. So, I'm sure many people listening have experienced this, but anxiety can cause, a withdrawal from situations where you feel stressed. It can make it very difficult to deal with stress because your cortisol levels in your body are way higher. So you're kind of on high alert all the time, and normal things, inverted commas, like supermarket shopping or taking the kids out for the day, they can become these great, terrifying obstacles. Depression.
And it's easier for somebody, it's easier for me to sort of crawl into bed. And I find a lot of people with depression, and that sense of that withdrawal from life, the fear of making mistakes, the fear of failure, just the fear of judgment, whatever form that comes, it's easier to lie in bed and put the cover over your head. And especially now with smartphones, is that you can literally bring your whole little isolated world into your bed with you, and you could it can entertain you for the entire day, weeks, with and you can escape from the world, and it's the worst thing. And I've, especially when you're a mum and you've got children and you're trying to, you've got a family to look after, whether you're a carer or, going to work, and it's that withdrawal that can be so difficult. I mean,
and I remember times going to work, feeling like I had no skin, and like feeling like, and that sounds weird, but like if you imagine you had no skin, and then everything would sort of tingle off you, like all your nerves are raw and exposed. Yeah. And any interaction feels a bit too intense and everything feels too exposed. Like I remember that feeling very strongly. But obviously we can't live in that state, and there's a number of things that can be done. So Mercedes, you talked earlier about different support that you've received medically. So the first thing, obviously, in a crisis is go and get some professional help.
I think,
and then
honestly now it is changing, and the experience I had 10 years ago is very different from the experience I had now, whether that's just because I was really lucky on who I got to speak with, but it seems to be something out there. And what I found, but what I did find was that I knew I was depressed, and so I reached out for help. And through the NHS, they had a talk line, but the waiting list for a 1-to-1 was 9 months. And they asked me, they were like, well, are you suicidal? I said, well, sometimes, and I was honest with them. I said, I don't think I'm going to do anything, but I do feel suicidal. And they were like, well, yeah, okay. They were like, well, it's 9 months. And I thought, 9 months. And it wasn't until I had what they now refer to as a crisis moment, and I had, I was really, really bad, that I discovered I managed to get in and get help. And now I'm on a rolling sort of group therapy, which is, I found amazing. But it's almost like you have to be at a crisis moment, before you get that help, where actually you need to be helped before you get to that, and I thought that was sad about it. But I mean, obviously the first thing that a doctor's going to do when you do go, if you are feeling depressed, it is good, you need to talk to somebody about it. You're going to have to dig deep, and you need to ask for help. And I think that's the first thing. And I think attitudes are changing, like I said. I think reaching out for help it is very hard to do, but it's the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're at a crisis point, one of the things I really like though about social media, you talked about, having your phone in your world in your bed, but I know that, a lot of my friends and peers on Facebook and on social media, they reach out using social media, and I've seen so much love through that, and I know that people have found that so useful as well. Is, even if you're not at a point where you think you need a medical intervention, where you need to be put on antidepressants, or you need to, have therapy or a medical intervention, talking to people about how you're feeling is so important. And that can be really hard. I know there are people who are genuinely socially isolated, and that can make it difficult. And I imagine that different generations find that more difficult as well. I think,
absolutely.
We're in midlife, and we're of a generation where it's sort of 50-50 about mental health, isn't it? But I know, like, my mum's generation, what? Mental health doesn't exist. You get on with it. Just get on with it.
Like, we didn't have that when I'll die.
Yeah.
So just get on with it. And I'm like, yeah, but look at you all. And
Yes.
all of the boomers are like, this is the funny thing, right? I mean, I could say this, she's not here anymore, but my mum, I remember like going on to antidepressants at one point, and I felt like a failure, right? And there was my mum who'd gone through all this stuff in her life, and she marched on like a,
tank.
Like a tank, exactly. And then one day she turned around and she went, oh yeah, but I've been on them for 25 years. And I was like, the fuck?
Yeah.
I was like, so I'm looking at her thinking that she's this machine, boom, 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 but actually she'd had been surviving on these tablets for 25 years. And I was like, whoa, and actually realizing that through her not dealing with her mental health affected me not dealing with my mental health, and having issues and so on and so forth. And that's why I think it's really important, like with my children, is to talk about it. Have you ever taken medication for depression, P?
Yeah, I think I did when I was in my 20s. At university, I was on antidepressants for about 6 months. But I had a real, and now looking back, I think it's a bit stupid, but I had that. Well, like you said, the first time you felt like a failure, and I had a feeling of like, this would have been back, year 2000, and I felt really like uncomfortable with it, so I've never gone back.
It's quite
on them.
stigmatized, isn't it? It's all right taking a tablet for your antibiotics or something.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I have to. It's for 10 days, but then you've got this tablet that's ongoing.
To moderate your serotonin levels and your happiness levels, but actually, now I think it's very, very different, and I think people's attitudes to it are different. But I would say my 20s wasn't the only time I experienced kind of symptoms of depression or mental ill health, but I actually probably self-medicated more with alcohol and and avoiding dealing with it. And I'm starting to realise now that sadly with mental health, like, you can get support and you should absolutely get support, but the journey's your own. Like, you have to take control of it. And I think we don't realise it, but I think that's probably true of physical illness as well, to an extent. Yes, there are external drugs that you take and things like that, but you actually have to actively take part in your own physical care too. And I think
because it almost becomes bigger. It feels bigger than you.
Yeah,
it feels like this monster, or sometimes I imagine it like a wave. I feel like I'm drowning in a stormy ocean, and every time I come up to take a breath, another wave crashes down on me. And that could be a letter or a bill. It could be a phone call I have to make. And these are like little life things that we all have to deal with.
Yeah.
But when you're feeling low and feeling vulnerable, those things feel like a tsunami.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I have never been good at drinking, which I sometimes wish I was better.
It's okay. You're really not a skill really you need to cultivate.
I've always been kind of jealous of, but I have drunk to numb the pain, but I always end up feeling worse. And I'm not, in that sense, I'm not addicted, but I do eat. That's where my binge eating comes in. I don't really do drugs. I'm not very good at that either. I'm not a very good drunk, but my sugar is the thing I do. So when I'm feeling like that, I eat. And that is a form of self-harm, because you know that eating this huge platter of dairy milk, plug there, but it's like, it's having an ill effect on my body. It's a sort of self-harming, and it's.
I would say also food is sustenance. So I think that when one is experiencing mental health, unhappiness, it could be anxiety, it could be any of those things, depression, people, you have what's called, I forgot the word for it, defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
So and food is sustenance. Food, feeling full, feeling content. There's a lot of connection with food and happiness. And I think your body and your brain are trying to comfort you in those moments of crisis. So sometimes that comfort eating is literally that. That's why it's called comfort eating.
But you know what I have is I mean, I've had a time now where I put on weight, and it was after the lockdown because of other things that were happening. But my brain, I just wasn't ready to eat healthy or do anything. I needed to eat. And actually, I think those are the times, like we said earlier, if you need to have a nap, if you need to go to bed for the day,
if you need to eat a bar of dairy milk.
Yeah. It's like, you can't go around it. You can't go under it. You've got to go through it. And sometimes you have to go, not everything is a straight linear line. I mean, how boring would we be anyway if life was just this straight line? Sometimes we have these moments, and I think you've just got to go through it and you come out the other side.
And I would even say the same with alcohol. We drink to feel good. I mean, yes, it has horrendous negative effects, and actually the next morning, the hangover, it does cause depression. And it's it's the same with food. Food will make you gain weight, but what your body is essentially trying to do, your body and your brain, is trying to feel good again. And if doing a little bit of what makes you feel good helps in that moment, then that's fine, you do it. But like everything, it's that old nothing to excess quote, everything in moderation. But are there ways of consistently, gradually, slowly building back your mental health that are not deleterious to your physical health? Are there ways? Because I know in my 20s, 30s, I found a pattern of, I would get into a mental health funk, I would get into a muddle, and I could never remember what got me out of it last time. And I think...
Do you know what it is? I tell you what it is. It's slow and it's baby steps.
But what are the things that you could have a list somewhere, and just like you're getting back into that cycle, because it comes in cycles. You get back into that feeling of grey, and you want to get out again, but you can't remember what you did last time to get out. What would you put on your list, on your reminder list? My
list would sort of be in chunks. And I think when I'm in bed, and I know I've been in bed, and I was in bed for months at one point. And I think the first thing is to sit up in bed. And it's just literally sit up.
Right.
Another thing is, if you need to get dressed and then get back into bed, but you recognize that moment that you've got dressed. You say, today I got dressed. I got out of bed to get dressed. I got back into bed, but I got dressed. Another thing is, you could go downstairs. Instead of staying in bed all day, I went downstairs and I sat on the sofa. I had a blanket, but I was downstairs. They are your first things when you're having a crisis. When your anxiety is too much, you have to stop and break it down into the smallest parts. And everything you do is an achievement. Did you brush your teeth? Fantastic. Did you wash yourself? Amazing. Yeah. Did you open the door to the postman? You don't have to even speak to him, but did you open the door? That little things like that, you have to start small. And then I would move on to, did you go for a walk? Did you cook yourself something? Nice meal? Did you plan to meet with a friend or did you phone a friend? Then you build up and you build up. And then when you're ready, you'll go, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to join this group. I'm going to start this new hobby. But you cannot do those things until you've ticked the list of, did I wash my face? Did I put clean socks on today?
I think that's really wise advice, and actually really lovely, and it is part of that thing of those little things are you taking responsibility and you taking ownership of your mental health, and they are what will start to get you back onto an even keel.
The last part of the show, we go onto Google and find the top 3 Googled questions on mental health, and we're going to see if we can answer it. So, P, what's the first question?
Are mental health and emotional health the same?
I mean, it's definitely linked. I would say that there is definitely a difference between the two, but also they're intertwined, because your emotions are part of, it's split into 4. If you've ever done any CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, you have your thoughts, your emotions, your behaviors, and thoughts, emotion, behaviors. There's one more.
Is it your body?
Physical, yeah, like reactive state. And they're all interlinked, but they're also all separate. And I think mental health is what we would classify as
the umbrella term, like all of it.
Yeah,
and then emotional health is one part of that.
It, and the emotions are part of that, because your mental health is going to affect the way you think, and it's going to affect the way you feel, as well as the way that you behave
and how you express those feelings.
Yeah.
So for example, if you're a very angry person, you may want to consider that your mental health might not be the best.
Yeah.
Because, if you're struggling with controlling anger, what's underneath and causing that anger?
Exactly. And I think if you I've just started looking at cognitive behavioral therapy, which is really good at breaking things down into smaller bite-sized pieces and thought processes. So, and I think your emotions or your reactions to things are certainly a massive signifier to what is happening inside your head. For example, me crying in Subway because there was too many choices.
Oh dear. Extreme choice anxiety.
I was just having anxiety. There was too much choice. They were asking me questions and my brain just shut down. I was just crying.
Oh no.
But I went outside and I thought there's too much option, and I made my choice outside the shop.
Very good.
Then I went back in and was able to tell my husband, who then ordered for me because I was still too nervous to just deal with that.
Yeah, choice anxiety is a thing, and there's so much choice now in the world. And yeah. Okay, question number 2 on Google.
Yeah.
Can mental health issues be cured?
Personally, I think they're always with you. I don't think you can be cured. I think you can learn to live with it.
I mean, I've done a lot of reading, mostly self-help books, and again, not a doctor, but I would say, yeah, you can learn to live with it. You can, in neuroscience terms, some of your mental health thought pattern processes are neural pathways that have been burned over time in a habit. So it's not unusual that you'd fall back into those ways of thinking, that sort of mindset. But equally, you can burn new neural pathways. So maybe every time you get over a mental health crisis, you're stronger. Yeah. Every time
you carry everything with you,
but you are able to recover. With a mixture of probably medication, psychotherapy. It really depends on the disease as well. We're talking about, I guess, more common mental health difficulties.
I mean, we're not talking
about
psychosis or schizophrenia or anything like that, because that's on a whole other level. But what we're talking about is sort of a general mental health issues,
but things like, severe addiction, food addiction, alcohol addiction. Yes, human beings can recover. Human beings are incredibly resilient. And a lot of it is about those two things, like asking for help and also taking responsibility without blame or shame.
Yeah. No blame, no shame.
No blame, no shame, but able to take responsibility for yourself, for your
absolutely.
wellness, and start to take steps to make yourself better. And I think that would probably apply to any kind of mental health disorder. But it's so hard. I remember being so furious when I first discovered that I was the person that had to fix me. Oh
God, yeah. You're like, what?
Yes.
Can't somebody come and fix me? And they're like, no, and you're gonna go home and you're gonna do some work on yourself. You're like, what? Oh.
But one comes through that disappointment, and you get stronger. Everything. Yeah. What doesn't kill you.
What's the last question?
Last question: can mental health issues be prevented?
Oh, I don't think they can. I think that, like we said, everyone has a trauma, and unless everybody's in therapy from a very young age, I think literally it comes up on you before you're even aware of it.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. Can it be prevented?
Well, I guess I don't know. I mean, again, you don't know. Although there are some mental health, on the spectrum of extremely severe to mild, there are some mental health disorders that are possibly hereditary and have a kind of brain chemistry or genetic impact.
Yeah.
But and then there are others that are caused by, trauma or life experiences.
Yeah.
Not everybody experiences mental ill health.
Because I said to somebody not that long ago, I said, I had to go see a therapist or something. And she went, oh, yeah, uni once. I got it. I went to a therapist for 6 sessions and she was like, yeah, it was all right. And I went, and to me, the way she said it sounded like she just went along for a laugh and she's never thought about it again. And, I actually was like, oh, my God, wow, what does that feel like?
Well, again, I think that sometimes, people talk about being busy, kind of distracting yourself. And I think those things are really good. Different things work for different people.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes
absolutely. How would you know if you're let's say you were a doctor of mental health looking at people to prevent it? I don't think you could know. Like, just everybody's so different and dealing with life so differently.
Yeah. And there's lots of things that society offers that could possibly prevent it, like sports when people are young, and community and cohesion and good parents, like having really strong, loving, emotionally available parents could possibly prevent mental health difficulties. But it's so ubiquitous, and trauma is so ubiquitous, and I'm just using the word ubiquitous a lot here because it's a cool word. These things are everywhere, and like you said, everyone...
Cool word.
Go on, you can say ubiquitous. Go on.
Ubiquitous.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Say it again. So,
I think, to sum everything up, we're not experts, but we've been through it all. And in terms of surviving mental health, you have to be the one to take responsibility. And as shit as that sounds, there's the truth. You've got to stand. You've got to take the first step. But there is a community of people out there. Talk to people. Ask for help.
You're not alone.
You're not alone. Make gratitude lists. Whether it's knitting or cleaning the toilet or just getting up and going to work, whatever you're doing, you're achieving amazing things, and you should stop and say, I am an amazing person. I am doing all this thing. I clean my teeth twice a day.
Yeah.
You're an incredible human being. Thank you.
Yeah.
And we just want to say, look after yourselves. We hope in this series that you will learn to love yourselves a little bit more just for who you are and what you're doing right now. And that we love you.
Yeah, we love you loads.
And on next week's episode, we're going to be discussing another part of self-care, which is exercise, which I know me and P are very excited about. And we were going to have a very, very special guest.
Yeah,
it's exciting. Our first ever guest on the show is going to be coming up next week. So we hope that you all join in and tune in, listen to our podcast, share it with a friend. It would be great. Yeah. And we love you all, and we'll see you all next week. So goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Love you. Bye. doesn't matter how many times you slip. The point is, isn't it? It doesn't matter how many times we fall. Or is it from Batman? It's not about how many times we fall, Mr. Wayne. It's about
What's
getting
the
up.
end? It's about getting up again.
It's about
Or,
getting up every time.
the great Chumbawamba. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down.
Exactly.